up for the trophy presentation is now underway. That will be happening in just a few minutes.
Aryna Sabalenka just walked straight into a nightmare she didn't see coming. The tennis powerhouse now finds herself tangled in serious allegations involving dirty tactics and inappropriate conduct that have the FBI circling screenshots are spreading. Accusations are multiplying, and tennis authorities can't ignore this anymore. What started as whispers about questionable behavior on court has exploded into a full-blown scandal that threatens to destroy everything Sabalenka built. The question everyone's asking isn't whether she crossed a line, it's whether she can survive what comes next. So here's what I want to know. Do you think top players get away with behavior that would get anyone else suspended? Let's rewind to where this mess actually began. Because nobody wakes up one morning and decides to torpedo their entire career over a tennis match. This situation didn't explode overnight. It built slowly, quietly, in that dangerous space between confidence and arrogance where champions sometimes lose their way. Aryna Sabalenka had spent years building her reputation as one of the most feared competitors in women's tennis. Raw power, mental toughness, the kind of intensity that made opponents nervous before they even stepped on court. She wasn't just winning matches, she was dominating them, crushing dreams with serves that sounded like gunshots and ground strokes that left opponents scrambling. Her rise to the top felt inevitable, almost natural, like watching a force of nature claim its rightful place. But here's the thing about staying at the top. It makes you paranoid. Every young player suddenly looks like a threat. Every upset feels personal. Every loss feels like the beginning of the end. And when you've built your entire identity around being the most intimidating player in the room, you start doing whatever it takes to maintain that image. Enter Alexandra Eala, the Filipino phenom who wasn't supposed to be a problem this early. She was supposed to spend a few years learning, maturing, paying her dues before threatening the established order, except nobody sent Eala that memo. She stormed through tournaments with the kind of fearless energy that makes veterans uncomfortable. No hesitation, no reverence for reputation, just pure belief that she belonged among the best. And that belief? That's what rattled people like Sabalenka. The tension between them didn't start with dramatic confrontations or public feuds. It started with small moments that fans noticed but couldn't quite explain. A handshake that lasted half a second too short, a press conference answer that felt colder than necessary body language that screamed discomfort whenever Eala's name came up. Nothing obvious enough to call out, but enough to make people wonder if something deeper was brewing. Then came their match, the one that would change everything. The atmosphere felt wrong from the moment they walked on court. Sabalenka entered with that familiar stone-faced intensity, jaw clenched, shoulders tight, looking like she was preparing for war rather than a tennis match. Eala bounced in with youthful energy, smiling, loose, ready to prove she belonged. The contrast was stark, almost uncomfortable to watch. The first set played out normally enough. Power versus precision, experience versus hunger, two completely different styles colliding. But something shifted in the second set, something that would later spark accusations, investigations, and a PR nightmare that Sabalenka's team is still scrambling to contain. Sabalenka started stretching her pre-serve routine, bouncing the ball 15, 16, 17 times, walking to her towel slowly, deliberately, making Eala wait. At first, it seemed like standard gamesmanship, the kind of rhythm disruption veterans use to throw off younger players. But it kept escalating. The pauses grew longer. The stares grew colder. The timing felt too calculated to be coincidental. Then came the moment that sent social media into overdrive mid-rally. Sabalenka let out a grunt that didn't match the rhythm of play, not during her own shot, but right as Eala was about to make contact. A split-second disruption that could have been accidental, except it happened again 2 points later. And then again. Eala's body language changed immediately. Confusion, frustration, the unmistakable tension of someone trying to stay composed while feeling deliberately rattled. Eala finally raised her hand to the chair umpire, not aggressively, not dramatically, just a quiet gesture that said something isn't right here. The umpire nodded, issued a soft warning about pace of play, and the crowd started murmuring. That murmur turned into something bigger when cameras caught Sabalenka's reaction. A smirk, brief, subtle, but unmistakable in slow-motion replay. The kind of expression that says, I know exactly what I'm doing. And that's when the match stopped being about tennis and became about something much uglier. Social media didn't wait for official statements or investigations. Within minutes, clips were circulating with captions like, "Dirty tactics," and unsportsmanlike behavior. Tennis fans, Filipino supporters, casual observers, everyone had an opinion, and most of them weren't favorable to Sabalenka. One angle showed the delayed serve, another captured the mistimed grunt, a third froze on that smirk that would become the defining image of the controversy. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. The turn that brought FBI allegations into the picture. Because buried in all those viral clips was audio that fans claim captured something far worse than gamesmanship. A courtside microphone allegedly picked up Sabalenka, muttering something under her breath during a changeover. Something that sounded disturbingly like a racial slur directed at Eala. The audio quality was terrible, distorted, unclear, open to interpretation. But online audiences don't wait for clarity. They decide based on context and emotion. And given everything else that happened during that match, people filled in the blanks with the worst possible interpretation. Suddenly, this wasn't just about questionable tactics anymore. This was about potential hate speech from one of the sport's biggest stars. The comparisons to Coco Gauff started almost immediately. Fans began digging through old footage, looking for patterns, searching for proof that Sabalenka had a history of treating opponents of color differently. They found a tense handshake after a loss to Gauff, a press conference where Sabalenka seemed dismissive when asked about rising Black and Asian players. Moments that seemed innocent at the time, but now looked suspicious under the microscope of public outrage. Whether any of this constituted actual evidence of racial bias didn't matter. The narrative had formed, hardened, and spread faster than any official investigation could keep up with. Hashtags exploded. #stand. With Eala trended in multiple countries, Investigate Sabalenka gained traction despite being based on allegations rather than confirmed facts. Tennis authorities issued vague statements about reviewing footage for potential sportsmanship violations, carefully avoiding specifics but doing nothing to calm the storm. And then came the FBI angle, the claim that elevated this from sports controversy to potential federal case. According to rumors spreading through tennis forums and social media, someone had filed a formal complaint with the FBI claiming Sabalenka's alleged slurs constituted hate speech that crossed into criminal territory. Whether this complaint had any legal merit, whether the FBI was actually investigating, whether any of this would result in charges, nobody knew for certain. But the mere suggestion that federal authorities might be involved sent shockwaves through the tennis world. Sabalenka's team went into crisis mode, radio silence from her social media, no press conferences, no statements beyond a brief, lawyered-up response that said nothing meaningful. That silence, intended to prevent further damage, instead made her look guilty in the court of public opinion. Because when you're accused of something this serious and you respond with silence, people assume the worst. Meanwhile, Eala handled the situation with remarkable grace. She posted one simple message: "Respect is part of the game. I hope we all remember that." 8 words that said everything and nothing, acknowledging the controversy without feeding it, maintaining dignity without attacking her accuser. The response made Sabalenka's silence look even worse by comparison. Former players weighed in, split between those defending competitive intensity and those calling for accountability. Commentators dissected every frame of the match. Legal experts debated whether alleged on-court slurs could actually result in federal charges. The story consumed tennis coverage for weeks, overshadowing tournaments, rankings, and everything else happening in the sport. What made this situation particularly toxic was the intersection of multiple issues: gamesmanship versus unsportsmanlike conduct, veteran privilege versus rising star respect, racial dynamics in a predominantly white sport, the power of social media to convict before any official investigation concludes. Every angle added fuel to a fire that showed no signs of burning out. Sabalenka eventually returned to competition, but she was different. The swagger was gone, replaced by careful restraint. Her pre-serve routines shortened noticeably. The intense stare-downs softened. Whether this represented genuine change or calculated image rehabilitation, nobody could say for certain. But the transformation was obvious to anyone paying attention. The FBI investigation, if it ever actually existed beyond internet speculation, never resulted in public charges. Tennis authorities reviewed the footage, issued generic statements about sportsmanship expectations, and quietly closed the matter without specific findings or penalties. But the damage was done. Sabalenka's reputation had taken a hit that no amount of winning could completely repair. Eala, meanwhile, emerged from the controversy with enhanced credibility. Her composure under pressure became legendary among younger players. Her refusal to engage in mudslinging while still standing up for herself became a masterclass in handling adversity. She didn't just survive the situation, she turned it into a platform that elevated her profile beyond what any tournament victory could have achieved. The really interesting part came months later, when patterns started emerging in how matches involving Sabalenka were officiated. Umpires seemed more attentive to pace of play violations. Time violations were called more strictly. Whether this represented actual bias against her or just heightened awareness from officials worried about another controversy, the effect was the same. Sabalenka found herself playing under more scrutiny than ever before. Some fans argued she deserved it, that the controversy revealed character flaws that needed addressing. Others claimed she was being unfairly targeted, that one bad match was being used to define an entire career. The truth, as usual, probably lived somewhere in the complicated middle where human beings make mistakes, face consequences, and hopefully learn from them. What nobody could deny was that the incident changed conversations about conduct in professional tennis. Discussions about gamesmanship versus crossing lines became more nuanced. Questions about racial dynamics in the sport moved from whispered observations to open dialogue. The power of social media to shape narratives and demand accountability became impossible to ignore. For Sabalenka, the path forward required more than just winning matches. It required rebuilding trust, demonstrating through actions rather than words that the behavior in that match was an aberration rather than a pattern. Some people would never forgive her. Their minds made up the moment those clips went viral. Others would give her the benefit of doubt, believing in redemption and second chances. Most would watch and wait, letting time and behavior determine their judgment. The alleged FBI investigation, whether real or imagined, represented something bigger than one player's legal troubles. It symbolized a cultural shift where athlete behavior, often on the court, faces scrutiny that previous generations never experienced. The days when stars could act however they wanted and face minimal consequences were over, replaced by an era where accountability came swift and public. This story proves that in modern sports, your reputation can crumble faster than you can rebuild it. Sabalenka learned the hard way that intensity without respect creates enemies, not legends. Eala showed us that grace under pressure speaks louder than any comeback. The court will always be the final judge, but public opinion writes the narrative that follows you forever. If you found this breakdown valuable, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss the controversy everyone's talking about.